My name is Stephen Hill. I'm a professor of political science, and the course is POLS 330 US Foreign Policy. There are two objectives in the course. One is to educate students about the foreign policy options that are out there in terms of what we call grand strategies. There are about 4 of them, and these grand strategies are the principal ways that the United States can act in world politics. So we compare and contrast those options, but we also want to better understand the foreign policy making process too. So we look at the different actors in US foreign policy, including the executive and the Congress and the foreign policy bureaucracy. So our goal is twofold. One is to debate and analyse the different options that exist in foreign policy, and also to understand the foreign policy making process. This is, I think, what we might call a little bit of a non-traditional classroom, because there's the traditional teaching. So, there's the teaching when I'm at the front of the class informing the students about the nature of US foreign policy and the history and the theory behind it. But in this class we're also trying to use non-traditional methods, active learning methods. So the students today, for example, will be writing foreign policy speeches. I asked them to essentially write a summary of a foreign policy speech for each grand strategy that we look at. The reason for that is that all the literature tells us if you're actually doing something with the information rather than just sitting listening to the teacher, you're going to understand the material better, but you're also going to retain it too. So for each grand strategy that we look at in the first 4 or 5 weeks, the students will work in groups in order to write a summary of that approach and how it would deal with the major issues that affect the United States. So that will help them gain a better idea of the similarities and differences between the grand strategies. And then for later in the semester, we'll be looking at the principal issues that are facing the United States, issues like what to do in the case of Russia and, of course, Russia's intervention in Ukraine in 2014, or the growing power of China, or the proliferation of nuclear weapons, or what to do about ISIS and terrorism. So we'll be learning more about each of those individual issues and then placing those in the context of the grand strategy debate that we're having at the beginning of the semester. So that's essentially what we're doing in terms of active learning, having the students working in groups to write these grand strategies. But we're also using the traditional methods of discussion, and the students are writing research papers and exams too. So we have those more traditional methods, but it's a little bit non-traditional in terms of the active learning. There's a significant amount of active learning that's incorporated in this class. Well, I think the principal thing I want them to take away is just how important foreign policy is and understanding foreign policy. I mean, it's always a wonderful thing to be teaching a course like this when it's a presidential year, because I think it really does make it tangible to students when they're listening to the debates, just how important it is to understand foreign policy, because each one of them as a citizen is going to have to vote for a candidate, and each candidate is vocalizing their approach to world politics. How are they going to try to make the world more peaceful, and how are they going to make the United States more secure in the future? And they have different ideas about how to do that. So this class hopefully will inform the students about the different approaches that already exist, but that will also be looking at the theoretical underpinnings of them, so that we can compare, contrast them, and then the students will decide themselves which approach they think will be most successful. And on the basis of that, they can choose a candidate that best reflects that approach. So rather than just throwing a dart at a board hoping to pick the right policy, or just going for the candidate that sounds the best, hopefully now they'll be educated in foreign policy well enough to make an educated choice in terms of who their candidate will be. So hopefully they'll go away with a better understanding of foreign policy, but also a greater appreciation of just how important it is to be an educated citizen in the democratic process when you're choosing a president and the foreign policy that you hope will make the US and the rest of the world more prosperous and secure.